Outside the school, the young blind girl pleaded for help as thieves surrounded her. Her loyal guide dog growled, but no one intervened, until an unexpected scream echoed, revealing something that made everyone freeze. The mid-afternoon sun bathed the neat sidewalks of Oakwood Heights in shimmering light, although for Isabel that glow existed only in memory. She had been blind since early childhood, and yet she navigated her world with an uncanny grace that came from years of disciplined practice and quiet resolve. At 22, she was slender, with honey-brown hair often arranged in a simple braid that hung over her left shoulder. A faithful white cane guided her steps, tapping gently against the pavement as she approached the familiar gates of Oakwood Public School. That rhythmic tap was her lifeline to independence. But on this day, it would also become her call for help in a way she could never have predicted. She was volunteering at the school twice a week, tutoring younger children who also had visual impairments. Reading Braille to them, helping them adjust to daily routines, these were tasks she embraced wholeheartedly. Having once been a frightened little girl facing a permanent darkness, Isabel found a sense of purpose in mentoring others who walked a similar path. Yet the area surrounding the school had grown more dangerous of late. Strange men had been spotted loitering in the evenings, rumors of petty theft and vandalism swirling through the neighborhood. Isabel tried to dismiss the whispered warnings. She had walked these streets for years without incident after all. She believed her routine was safe, that her calm and focus would shield her from trouble. She had no idea how wrong she was. Detective Riley, a gruff yet kind-hearted officer from the local precinct, had recently suggested the school hire extra security. Budget constraints and administrative delays meant that no official guard had been posted yet, but there was talk of introducing a canine service dog to patrol the outer gates. The rumor alone comforted some parents, especially those who lingered anxiously by the entrance at pickup time. But for now, it remained just an idea. Nobody expected that the first real canine presence to show up at Oakwood would come from such an unlikely source. 4 blocks from the school's front gate stood a small single-story building that served as the local police canine training center. It was a modest facility, gray walls, chain-link fencing, and a courtyard where young police dogs learned to handle real-world challenges. Among the dogs in training was a striking German Shepherd named Kaiser, nearing the end of his specialized program. He was known for his keen intelligence, unwavering loyalty, and a deep empathy rarely seen even among service animals. Kaiser's trainers joked that he had the spirit of a guardian angel. Indeed, he had excelled at suspect apprehension drills, crowd control exercises, and obedience tests. Yet, at every opportunity, he showed a surprising gentleness with children or with anyone vulnerable. If a frightened visitor came to the training center, Kaiser would be the first dog to approach calmly, letting them stroke his thick coat, lowering his ears to seem less intimidating. It was as if he sensed exactly who needed reassurance. That afternoon, just before classes ended at the nearby school, Kaiser was off duty for a brief rest. One of the handlers had turned him loose in the courtyard, trusting him not to wander, but a sudden gust rattled the main gate, which had been left unlatched. Curious and drawn by the distant sounds of laughter and chatter, Kaiser nosed his way outside. He trotted along the perimeter wall, muzzle high, as he took in the warm air. A faint sense of restlessness flickered in his chest. Something beyond those streets beckoned him. No one noticed the large German Shepherd slip out, guided by an instinct that would prove life-saving within the hour. Meanwhile, inside Oakwood Public School, Isabel concluded her volunteer session. The children she tutored always seemed captivated by her melodic voice, the way she deftly ran her fingers over raised dots, interpreting stories for them with genuine warmth. At day's end, she packed her Braille texts and stepped out through the main doors, feeling the quiet shift of late afternoon settle on the school grounds. She paused, adjusting to the hush. Most students had already gone home. The breeze carried the scent of freshly mowed grass from the soccer field, mixing with faint traffic sounds in the distance. She took a careful step forward, cane tapping. There was no immediate reason for worry, yet across the street, behind the trunk of a towering oak, two figures lurked. Their hooded sweatshirts concealed their faces, but their low murmuring and tense postures revealed ill intentions. They had watched Isabel enter the school earlier, concluding she would make an easy target upon leaving. After all, she couldn't see them. The possibility of easy money was too tempting. With a glance around to ensure no one else was on the sidewalk, they crept forward. Isabel's instincts alerted her that something was off. The presence of footsteps she couldn't place, too close and too hesitant, set her pulse racing. Her cane located a slight crack in the pavement, and she hesitated. If only the school's security guard had stayed a bit longer. If only someone else were around. At once she felt a rough hand seize her shoulder, making her nearly drop her cane. "Hey!" she exclaimed, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and indignation. "Who's there? Let go of me." One of the thieves, breathing heavily, muttered for her to keep quiet. The other tugged at the small purse slung across her body. Her heart hammered. She'd heard stories of victims being thrown to the ground or worse. Instinctively, she raised her cane, trying to keep hold of her bag. But being blind in this moment felt utterly terrifying. Her awareness of space, normally so attuned, became a dizzy swirl of confusion. She struggled, but they were pushing her backward, away from the gate, away from any faint chance of help. Desperate, Isabel cried out, "Help! Please, anyone!" The second thief yanked harder, trying to rip the purse strap from her. Adrenaline spiked in her veins. She swung her cane wildly, more to ward off the unknown shapes around her than to do any real damage. Her breath caught in her throat when she felt a sweaty palm clamp over her mouth. Yet even as the thieves closed in, fixated on subduing her, a sudden and furious bark tore through the tension-filled air. It echoed so powerfully that both men halted for a fraction of a second. Another bark, sharper this time, accompanied the thunderous approach of paws against concrete. With a savage growl, Kaiser streaked into the fray, bounding over the short hedge that separated the sidewalk from the schoolyard. His eyes blazed with protective intent, ears pinned forward, as though everything in him demanded he protect this helpless stranger. Startled, the thief who had grabbed Isabel's mouth jerked away to confront the animal. He released her so forcefully that she stumbled backward, nearly losing her balance. The second thief cursed under his breath. They had planned for easy prey, not for a well-trained K9 lunging to defend her. Kaiser, stance low and muscles taut, let out a warning snarl that reverberated through the quiet block. His muzzle was curled back, exposing his teeth, enough to let them know he meant business. One man swung at Kaiser, a clumsy attempt to strike the dog. But Kaiser dodged, powerful hind legs propelling him sideways with remarkable agility. Isabel, senses reeling, crawled toward a near wall, her heart pounding. In the swirl of confusion, she barely registered that the dog was shielding her from further harm. The second man tried to circle around to snatch Isabel or her bag, but Kaiser spun, pivoting with lethal precision, blocking every approach. The shepherd barked so fiercely that the thieves realized they were outmatched. "This is messed up," the first man hissed. "Where did that dog even come from?" "Forget it," the other spat. "We gotta get out of here. Let's go." They backed away, eyes darting in search of potential witnesses. Kaiser advanced a step, growling deep in his throat, forcing them to keep distance. Tension thick in the air. Both thieves retreated, then sprinted around the corner, vanishing into the shadows. Only once they had fully disappeared did Kaiser drop his guard. He turned to Isabel, panting, tail swishing in a concerned wag, as if to assure her that the danger was gone. Isabel trembled, gripping her cane so hard her knuckles went white. Her breath came in ragged gasps. Who "Who's there?" she managed. Her voice quivered as she realized the thieves had fled, leaving her to wonder whether the dog remained. She could hear panting right beside her, a warmth that radiated from a body close enough to touch. She extended a shaky hand, nearly expecting the dog to back away or snarl again. But Kaiser's muzzle gently pressed into her palm, a comforting gesture that sent a wave of relief surging through her. "Thank you," she whispered, tears threatening to spill from her eyes. "I don't know how you got here, but thank you." She wasn't used to letting her guard down, especially not around an animal she'd never met, but something about Kaiser's calm presence and the way he had intervened set her at ease. Gently, she stroked the fur atop his head, feeling the strong, steady shape of his ears, the smoothness of his coat. The dog let out a low, reassuring whine as if urging her not to be afraid. Behind them, the school's doors swung open and a custodian who had heard the commotion came rushing out. "Miss, are you all right?" he called, his voice echoing across the courtyard. Isabel, still on the ground, struggled to push herself up. Kaiser positioned himself closer, almost bracing her so she could lean on his sturdy form. Her breathing remained unsteady, but the immediate terror had subsided. She turned her head in the direction of the custodian's voice. "Two men. They attacked me," she said, her words tumbling out in a shaken whisper. "They ran off when this dog appeared." The custodian's eyes widened, scanning the area for signs of the assailants. Seeing none, he hurried to Isabel's side, phone in hand. "I'll call the police," he said, punching in the emergency number, "and an ambulance just in case." A protective note tinged his words. He guided her gently onto a nearby bench, but noticed how she clung to the dog's presence. Kaiser followed, never straying more than a foot from her side. Already, a small crowd began to gather. A teacher who had been staying late to grade papers, a pair of parents coming to pick up a child from an extracurricular program, even a teenager from the next block who had heard barking and yelling. Questions swirled among them. "Is that a police dog? Who does he belong to? Is the young woman all right?" Someone draped a light cardigan over Isabel's shoulders. She remained quiet, letting her trembling fingers rest on Kaiser's neck for reassurance. In the distance came the wail of a police siren drawing closer. Oakwood Heights was about to discover just how extraordinary this German Shepherd really was, and Isabel, frightened but unbroken, would soon realize that sometimes a single moment of bravery, even from an unexpected four-legged protector, could alter the entire course of her life. She exhaled slowly, letting the tension pour out as best she could. Even though her sight was gone, she felt more aware than ever of the living warmth beside her. "Good boy," she whispered, leaning her head toward the dog's muzzle. "I'm so grateful." Kaiser responded with another gentle whine, as if to say he was just doing what he was born to do. In that hushed moment, sirens advancing and curious onlookers at the gate, Isabel held on to the unspoken promise that this encounter was no accident. A bright thread of destiny, between a determined young woman and a canine who followed his instincts, had been woven right there on the sidewalk. Little did either of them know just how deeply their futures would intertwine. The sirens grew louder, echoing across the school's brick walls as the patrol car pulled up to the curb. Detective Riley, the same officer who had advised boosting security around Oakwood Public School, stepped out swiftly. He was a tall man with a neatly trimmed mustache and a calm authority that put people at ease. Several onlookers pointed in Isabel's direction, and at once, Riley made his way toward the bench where she sat clutching her cane. The German Shepherd, unknown to him at that moment, stood attentively by her side, ears perked, tail still except for an occasional gentle wag. "You're safe now," Riley said, kneeling to Isabel's eye level. He spoke gently, mindful of her distress. "My name is Detective Riley. May I ask your name?" She turned slightly. oriented by the deep timbre of his voice. "Isabel," she managed, though her throat felt tight. She lifted her free hand to indicate the dog at her side. "This dog." He chased them away. Riley nodded, letting his gaze travel over the animal's well-groomed coat and the bright intelligence shining in its eyes. "Looks like a trained shepherd," he observed, glancing back at the teacher who'd hurried out. "Anyone know if this dog belongs to the school security program?" The custodian shrugged, perplexed. "Never seen him before. He just showed up." Riley produced a small flashlight, flicking it on to examine a faint abrasion on Isabel's forearm. "We'll have the paramedics check you over, just to be sure," he said. "But I'm glad you're okay. It could have been worse." "Did you notice anything distinct about the attackers? Accents, footsteps, any detail at all?" Isabel shook her head, frustration welling up. "They hardly spoke beyond telling me to keep quiet. There were 2 of them. Both men, I think. I'm sorry." "You've nothing to apologize for," Riley assured her. "We'll do our best to locate them. There's a security camera on the corner store nearby. We'll pull footage." 2 more officers arrived, stepping out of a second vehicle. While one spoke to potential witnesses, the other approached the dog, extending a careful hand. Kaiser sniffed the officer's palm with surprising calm, as if confirming there was no threat. Meanwhile, Detective Riley rose and turned to address the circle of bystanders. "If anyone saw which way the suspects ran, please speak to Officer Martinez. We need all the info we can gather." The hustle of official procedure swirled around Isabel, who remained on the bench, her heart rate still elevated. Kaiser nudged her knee, and she realized how intently he was watching over her. She stroked the thick fur behind his ears, mustering a timid smile in his direction. She could almost feel his breath soften in response. Soon an ambulance pulled up. 2 paramedics hopped out, guiding a rolling kit toward Isabel. "We'll check for any cuts or bruises," one said kindly, taking note of how the dog stood watch. "You're lucky he showed up, miss. A lot of folks around here have seen a spike in street crime." "I didn't realize it was getting this bad," she murmured. A wave of relief coursed through her as the paramedic gently dabbed at the shallow scratch on her arm. Isabel's parents lived out of state, trusting that Oakwood was a safe environment for their daughter's independence. She had believed it too. Now all that confidence quavered. As they finished dressing the scratch, Detective Riley returned, phone in hand. "We're trying to figure out where this dog came from," he explained, pointing at Kaiser. "He doesn't have a visible tag, but he's obviously well trained. We suspect he might be from the police K-9 center about 4 blocks over." The officer who had introduced himself to Kaiser turned around. "I just radioed the training center. They said one of their shepherds might have slipped out. Description fits. A black and tan male named Kaiser. They want him back right away, but..." Riley cut in, noticing how Isabel's hand still rested on the dog. "But maybe there's a reason he ended up here." He crouched again to address her. "Would you mind if we take him back for a quick check? The trainers will make sure he's all right. You can give your statement at the station tomorrow, or whenever you're ready." Isabel's immediate response surprised even herself. She stiffened, not wanting to lose the dog's reassuring presence. She couldn't quite articulate why. She just knew that in the dark confusion of that attack, Kaiser had been her anchor. Can I see him again? I'd like to thank him properly." Riley smiled softly. "I don't see why not. If he's a police K-9 in training, he may be assigned somewhere soon, but I'll talk to the trainers. We'll figure something out. First, you focus on resting and speaking with your family about what happened. Do you have someone to call?" She nodded, producing her phone from the small bag the thieves had tried to grab. "I'll call my aunt. She lives not too far. She can pick me up." When the paramedics finished their brief exam, Isabel carefully rose, leaning on her cane. Kaiser moved to press his side gently to her calf, offering silent support. She whispered a last word of gratitude, ruffling the thick fur on his neck. For a moment it felt as though they shared a private understanding, one that transcended sight or speech. Then a uniformed officer guided the shepherd into the back of a patrol SUV, and Isabel stood alone once more, hearing the engine rev and fade into the distance. The ride back to the training center was uneventful, but within the vehicle, Kaiser paced anxiously, as if already missing the woman he had rescued. Outside, the storm clouds began to roll in, painting the sky a dull gray. Once they arrived, Kaiser leapt down from the SUV, scanning the yard with alert eyes. He was brought inside by a handler named Grace, a tall woman in her 40s with a calm manner that put the dog at ease. She fastened his leash and led him to a quiet corner of the facility. "Kaiser," Grace murmured, kneeling to meet his gaze. "You ran off on us, huh? We got worried." Yet she could see in his posture a proud determination, as though he had done exactly what he was meant to do. She stroked behind his ears. "They said you saved a girl today, a blind girl. Good job, buddy." Kaiser lowered his head for a moment, muzzle resting against her hand. He could still sense the lingering adrenaline in his system, the echo of that brief but fierce confrontation. Inside his chest, there was that same tug, the awareness that he belonged with that young woman. The trainers had always said Kaiser's emotional attunement was remarkable, and now he felt it pulling him toward someone beyond these walls. "We'll have the vet check him," Grace announced to one of her colleagues. "Make sure he wasn't hurt. Then we can decide if he needs further evaluation before continuing his program." While the staff bustled around him, Kaiser allowed the routine exam, though his attention remained divided, ears twitching at the faintest sound. If dogs could reflect, he might have wondered whether he had done the right thing or acted prematurely by venturing out. Yet the memory of Isabel's trembling voice calling for help told him all he needed to know. He had been exactly where he was needed. Elsewhere, that same afternoon, Isabel sat at her aunt's kitchen table, the warmth of a mug of chamomile tea resting between her palms. She recounted the story in halting words. The thieves, the sudden terror, the bark that cut through the darkness. Each moment replayed in her mind like the shards of a mosaic she struggled to fit together. Her aunt reached across, giving her hand a tender squeeze. "You're safe now, sweetie," her aunt murmured. "That dog was your guardian angel." Isabel exhaled shakily, setting her cup down. "I can't stop thinking about him. I felt protected, not pitied. Sometimes people want to help me because I'm blind, but they do it out of condescension or guilt. With him it was different. He just knew I was in danger." Her aunt's small kitchen radio hummed softly with the local news. After a few moments of mutual silence, Isabel asked, "Do you think I should go to the station tomorrow? I mean, they said I could give my statement, and I want to see if the dog's all right." "Absolutely," her aunt encouraged. "Do it. Let the officers know everything you can, even if it feels minor. And if you want to see the dog again, I'm sure they'll let you." Though Isabel tried to push away the memory of her attackers, it lingered like a stubborn shadow. She realized her confidence had taken a hit. The very notion of walking alone filled her with dread. Yet the thought of Kaiser's unflinching defense comforted her in an odd way. Perhaps, she reflected, that was how genuine courage was born. One found it first in others, then slowly learned to carry it within oneself. That evening, as a light rain drummed on the roof, Isabel lay awake, replaying the day's events. The men had come out of nowhere. The dog, Kaiser, had appeared just as swiftly. She recalled the texture of his coat under her palm, the soothing rumble of his growls as he protected her. Something about that memory steadied her breath, helping her find a fragile sense of calm. Across town, Kaiser gazed through the chain-link fence into the rainy darkness. He'd finished his evening meal and had been placed in a large enclosure with a covered kennel. Yet he seemed restless, head turning toward the faint lights where Oakwood streets unfurled. Dogs didn't rationalize events the way humans did, but he felt he had left something undone, a thread that needed to be tied. He lay down, ears pricked toward the quiet hum of night, as though listening for her voice. Neither Isabel nor Kaiser realized that tomorrow would be the start of a partnership deeper and more profound than either could imagine. For the wheels of fate were already turning. The dedicated K9 and the young blind woman, their paths entwined by that single act of defense, would soon be guided by circumstances beyond their control. Circumstances that would see danger looming again, and demand from both a courage neither knew they possessed. In the morning, the bustle of Oakwood's main police station greeted Isabel with a wave of new sounds and uncertain textures underfoot. She clutched her cane and tried to center her awareness, stepping from the doorway onto the cool tiled floor. The gentle hush of voices in the reception area floated toward her, punctuated by the occasional ring of telephones somewhere beyond. Her aunt walked beside her, guiding her elbow lightly. The plan was for them to meet Detective Riley in order to file a formal statement about the attack. But beneath that official purpose, Isabel nurtured a private longing, the hope that she might encounter Kaiser again, if only briefly. A uniformed officer at the desk greeted them. "Good morning. You must be Isabel. Detective Riley's expecting you. I can take you to his office." The man's voice was courteous, laced with the kind of professionalism that comes from experience. Isabel thanked him quietly, following the sound of his footsteps through a short corridor. Her aunt kept pace just behind, a comforting presence. They arrived at a small office lined with metal filing cabinets. Detective Riley rose from behind his desk. "Isabel, good to see you. Please, come in and have a seat." He waited for her to navigate carefully toward the chair he pulled out. "How are you holding up since yesterday?" She settled the cane at her side. "Better than I thought I'd be. Still shaken, but I'm okay." Her aunt sat beside her, resting a supportive hand on her shoulder. "I wanted to give you whatever information I can, though I'm not sure I can identify them," and she trailed off, uncertain how to bring up the dog. Riley seemed to understand anyway. "Before we get started, you should know, Kaiser's perfectly fine. He's at the K9 training center, but they plan to bring him here later this afternoon. One of our handlers is coming by for a debrief, and Kaiser's part of the demonstration, so you'll get to see him soon." Relief coursed through Isabel's chest, momentarily lifting her spirits. "Thank you, Detective. That means a lot." Riley nodded and opened a folder on his desk. "All right. First, let's talk about the timeline and anything you recall from the incident. Don't worry if you think it's small or insignificant. Sometimes it's the smallest details that help." Isabel recounted the events carefully, describing the footfalls she heard, their approximate spacing, and how one of the men had a heavier breath than the other. She mentioned the roughness of his hand, the odor of cheap cologne. All the while, Detective Riley's pencil scratched across a notepad as he absorbed every word. When she reached the moment where Kaiser barreled in to defend her, she paused, her voice catching slightly. "I can't explain how powerful it was," she murmured. "I never had a dog before, but he just knew. He protected me without hesitation." Her aunt squeezed her hand. Riley offered a quiet smile. "He's top of his class, from what I hear. Even so, to break free like that and intervene, that's not in any training manual. It's pure instinct, and it saved you." They finished the statement, and Riley placed the notes in a folder. "We'll do our best to follow leads on the men who attacked you. In the meantime, Oakwood Public is increasing security. The school board is fast-tracking the idea of bringing in a K9 to patrol the perimeter." Good, her aunt said. That school needs it. After all, it could have been far worse if not for Kaiser. Riley stood and opened the door. If you'll follow me down the hall, we can finalize the paperwork at the front desk. The training center staff should arrive soon. If you're up to waiting, you can greet Kaiser when they come. Isabel smiled gratefully, nodding. Indeed, she didn't want to leave without seeing him. They returned to the front area, where the officer at the reception desk had them sign a few forms confirming the statement. The minutes passed slowly afterward. Isabel tapped her cane lightly, a gentle, repetitive motion she did whenever she felt anxious in unfamiliar surroundings. Finally, they heard the echoing click of nails on tile. A broad-shouldered female handler strode through the station's double doors, holding a leash. Kaiser trotted at her side, ears pricked. As soon as he entered, the shepherd's gaze flicked left and right, as though searching. Then he caught Isabel's scent, let out a low, excited rumble, and pulled gently on the leash. Grace, the handler, laughed. "Easy, Kaiser, easy. Let me get this off you." She unfastened the lead, and the dog wasted no time bounding over to the bench where Isabel sat. The sudden closeness took her by surprise, but she quickly recognized him by the feel of his fur as he laid his head near her knee. "There you are," she whispered, her voice trembling with gratitude. She reached out tentatively, and Kaiser pressed his muzzle into her hand. That simple act sent warmth through her entire body. "Thank you again, big guy." Grace approached, smiling. "He's been anxious all day, like he was waiting to see you. My name's Grace, one of his trainers. By rights, we should be scolding him for escaping yesterday, but given the circumstances, we're calling it a heroic impulse." Detective Riley joined them. "I'm guessing Kaiser's time at the center is almost up. Usually a dog this talented would be assigned to a partner or a specific unit. But the rumor is that his empathy makes him exceptional for protective detail or therapy support." He turned to Grace. "Any chance that assignment might be local?" Grace shrugged. "Too early to say. We have evaluations to complete, and other precincts or specialized teams might request him." Kaiser remained focused on Isabel, occasionally shifting to nudge her elbow as if to check on her well-being. Isabel lowered her voice. "Is it possible that I could see him again? I know it's not how these things usually work, but he's special." Her cheeks flushed, uncertain if her request sounded naive. Grace gave a sympathetic smile. "We don't normally place a K9 with a civilian, especially not at this stage. But maybe there's a chance for supervised visits. He made a connection with you, I can't deny that." Riley cleared his throat. "We also have to consider that you might still be at risk. The two men got away, and if they realize you helped us, even inadvertently, they might retaliate." A knot formed in Isabel's stomach at that realization. "I hadn't thought about that," she admitted softly. Her aunt set a firm hand on her shoulder. "Then we'll be careful. If it's truly risky, the best thing might be to ensure she has some means of protection." Grace considered the suggestion. "It's unusual, but I've seen programs that match service dogs with individuals who have unique vulnerabilities. Kaiser's training is geared toward police work, but if the administration approves..." At that, Kaiser nudged Isabel's hand again, as though urging them to hurry with any decisions. She let out a small laugh, tears pricking her eyes. "I don't want to upend his real job, but I won't lie. I feel safer with him." Detective Riley chimed in. "One step at a time. For now, you can keep in contact with Grace. If your case requires an extra layer of protection, maybe we arrange some sort of temporary guardianship with Kaiser on a trial basis." He glanced at Grace, assuming the department can be convinced. Grace took a moment to think. "I'll talk to my supervisor. We've got a meeting tomorrow. If it helps that Detective Riley vouches for it, and if the school is on board, we might find a creative solution." Her eyes flicked to Isabel. "But we should be clear. Kaiser is a skilled canine, not a pet. He'll have different protocols than a typical companion dog." "I understand," Isabel said, tone resolute. "I'd follow any rules that are needed. Just knowing how he protected me without hesitation, I'd do anything to keep that bond." Kaiser seemed to give an approving chuff, then settled at her feet as though nothing could make him budge. Her aunt gave an amused little sigh. "I can't believe this is happening, but in a way it feels right." Detective Riley's phone buzzed in his pocket. Checking it, he motioned for a moment of silence. "Yes? Right, I see. We'll follow up." Ending the call, he faced Isabel and Grace. "One of the businesses near the school turned over some security footage. We might have a partial ID on those guys. Turns out they've been linked to 3 other muggings in the area, but so far, no arrests." Isabel's spine tingled. "That means they're still out there." "They are," Riley agreed. "And until we catch them, you should stay alert. If you need to walk alone, do it in a group or somewhere you're certain is safe. We'll increase patrols, but we can't guarantee anything." Her aunt nodded, worry evident in her eyes. "She can stay with me as long as needed. We'll be careful." Grace unclipped the short leash from her belt. "Why don't you walk with Kaiser a bit here in the station courtyard, see how he responds to you? Just keep in mind he's used to certain commands. If he's going to watch over you, we'll need to teach you some basics." She handed the leash to Isabel's aunt, who helped guide it into Isabel's hand. The young woman's fingers shook slightly as she closed them around the handle. She sensed Kaiser's excitement, a subtle shift in his posture as if he recognized her as a partner. They moved slowly toward a side exit that led to a small fenced courtyard. The dog matched her pace with uncanny precision, never pulling too hard nor lagging behind. Once outside, the midday breeze caressed Isabel's face. She inhaled, trying to calm her lingering apprehension. Kaiser gave a gentle tug, just enough to prompt her to keep walking. A fragile smile found its way to her lips. It was only a short stroll, but each step felt like a promise of renewed confidence. Her aunt stood back, watching with cautious optimism. "Isabel, you look good with him," she called softly. "It feels amazing," Isabel said, though her voice was tight with emotion. "I haven't known him long, but it's like he already understands how to guide me." By the time they returned inside, Detective Riley and Grace were in hushed conversation. They turned as the pair approached. "I'll get the ball rolling on the possibility of a temporary assignment," Grace informed them. "No guarantees, but I'll stress the circumstances. If all goes well, you and Kaiser might have a chance to see how you work together, but it won't happen overnight." Isabel nodded, her hand still resting on Kaiser's broad back. "Thank you. It's more than I'd hoped for already." Riley stepped forward to shake her hand. "We'll keep you updated on any developments regarding the case. Meanwhile, take care of yourself. We'll do everything we can to keep Oakwood safe, especially near the school." With that, Grace and Kaiser departed, the shepherd casting one last backward glance at Isabel before the double doors closed behind them. For a moment, her world felt slightly dimmer without the dog at her side, yet the spark of hope he'd ignited remained. There was a path forward, uncertain but bright, that might allow them to stand together against whatever threats loomed. She turned to her aunt. "Let's go home." Her aunt gave a supportive nod. Home it is, and if fate is kind, Kaiser will join us soon enough. In the days following her meeting at the station, Isabel maintained a fragile balance between heightened caution and the hope that Kaiser might become a more permanent part of her life. Her aunt drove her to the school for volunteer work, insisting on waiting outside to escort her when she finished. Even so, Isabel felt uneasy. She couldn't shake the memory of the men who had nearly taken her purse, and maybe much more, but each time her thoughts veered toward that moment of dread, she recalled Kaiser's swift intervention, Her aunt occasionally teased her for how often she brought him up, yet there was no denying he had stepped into her world like a burst of light, giving her renewed faith in her own resilience. One late afternoon, as Isabel finished a tutoring session with 2 second graders, the principal poked his head into the resource room. "Isabel," he said quietly, "there's someone from the K-9 training center in the main office asking for you. It sounded important." Her heart fluttered with anticipation. She collected her Braille books, assured the children she would see them next week, and used her cane to navigate the familiar hallway. Though tension tugged at her nerves, excitement also rippled beneath it. In the office sat Grace, the same handler who had brought Kaiser to the police station. "Hope I'm not interrupting," Grace greeted warmly as Isabel approached. The door clicked shut behind them, sealing out the echo of nearby footsteps. "I had a meeting with the school board about adding K-9 support on campus, and I thought I'd update you on Kaiser's situation." Isabel gripped her cane. "Please tell me there's a chance." She caught herself feeling suddenly self-conscious, but the trainer's friendly tone encouraged her to continue. "I really want to know if the department decided anything." Grace exhaled. "It's not official yet, but the supervisors have been discussing it non-stop. You see, Kaiser is definitely patrol-capable, but he also shows an unusual capacity for gentle guidance, a dual role. It's unconventional. Typically, an active police K-9 isn't assigned to an individual the way a guide dog might be. But your case has forced them to think outside the box. The attack, your blindness, the strong bond you and Kaiser formed so quickly. There's a real possibility they'll pilot a new partnership that could combine protective detail with personal assistance." Isabel's breath caught. "Are you serious?" "I'd do whatever it takes. Classes, protocols, anything." Grace smiled. "I've brought some preliminary training materials. There's a short course you'd have to attend at the center so you can learn his commands. In parallel, Kaiser would be assessed to ensure he can handle both being your support and responding to potential threats." She paused, her voice turning more serious. "This isn't just about him escorting you around. It's about forging a working team. If you accept, your life will change in ways you might not expect." Isabel nodded, a surge of determination flickering in her chest. "I've been living life on my own terms for a while, but the truth is, the attack showed me how vulnerable I can be. If Kaiser can give me back some peace of mind, I'm ready." Grace laid a gentle hand on Isabel's shoulder. "Let's set a schedule. The sooner we start, the sooner you'll know if this arrangement works." That evening, as Isabel recounted the news to her aunt, their small living room filled with an excited warmth that even the lingering fear couldn't suppress. "If the department greenlights it," her aunt said, stirring sugar into her tea, "Kaiser might move in here with us, or would he stay at the training center?" "I'm not entirely sure," Isabel admitted. "Grace said it's a pilot program. We might start with daytime sessions, then eventually graduate to him staying overnight." She chewed her lip. "I don't want to get my hopes too high, but I can't help it." Her aunt smiled, leaning over to squeeze Isabel's hand. "You two have a connection that's hard to deny. And honestly, knowing you'd have that kind of protection whenever you set foot outside eases my mind too." When morning came, Isabel made her way to the K-9 training center for the first time in her life. Grace had given her meticulous instructions on how to travel by bus, and the bus driver, already alerted by phone, ensured she was dropped off safely at the main gate. A subtle wave of anxiety rippled through her as she stood at the fence, cane in one hand scanning the ambient sounds of barking. A staff member welcomed her inside, guiding her gently across the courtyard where multiple dogs practiced drills. She sensed the swirl of activity, sharp commands, the scrabble of paws on concrete, the hum of determined energy in the air. In the training hall, Grace waited. "Come on in," she urged. "Kaiser's in the side enclosure. I'll show you around." The distinct ring of the gate's latch made Isabel grin. She recognized Kaiser's bark almost immediately. A moment later, he came trotting up, pressing his muzzle against her free hand. Despite the swirl of movement and noise, he focused solely on her. Her smile widened. "Hey, you," she murmured, stroking the fur between his ears. Grace motioned for Isabel to follow. "Let's start with the basic commands he already knows. Then we'll adapt them to your needs. After that, we'll see how you handle moving around obstacles with him." For the next 2 hours, Isabel stood on the padded floor of a training ring, learning to interpret the slight tugs and changes in pace that Kaiser used to communicate. By carefully holding the handle of a special harness, she discovered how to read his body posture. At first, it was all very foreign, like trying to learn a new language in real time. But Kaiser displayed patient assurance, slowing whenever she stumbled, guiding her around cones and chairs placed to simulate hazards. He offered gentle tension whenever she hesitated, as though coaxing her forward. Grace's voice echoed across the space. "Be mindful of your cane, but trust his signals. You can't see obstacles, so rely on his presence. He's got excellent spatial awareness. That harness is your link." By lunchtime, Isabel's legs felt wobbly from the unfamiliar posture, but she brimmed with cautious excitement. They paused in an alcove near the courtyard. A light breeze carried the smell of freshly turned soil from a nearby flower bed. Kaiser lay by her feet, head resting on his paws as though content just to be near her. "You two are doing great," Grace remarked. "Better than I expected for day one. He's responding well to your voice." Isabel reached down to trace the shape of Kaiser's collar, letting her fingers rest against the sturdy leather. "I never thought I'd handle a dog like this. It's a lot to take in, but he feels like a natural extension of me." "That's what I'm hoping," Grace replied, her tone kind. "We'll keep this up for a few days, then I'll file a report. If the higher-ups agree, we'll push for an extended trial. Meanwhile, the department still needs to find those thieves. With any luck, that situation gets resolved sooner rather than later." Over the ensuing week, Isabel threw herself into the training. Each morning, she'd arrive at the center, greet Kaiser, and spend hours learning commands, practicing how to interpret his subtle shifts, and building the trust that was crucial to their partnership. Though the physical demands were draining, she found them oddly exhilarating. The fear lodged in her chest since the mugging began to ease a fraction each time Kaiser gently guided her around an obstacle. During breaks, she often listened to the stories of other canine handlers. Some boasted about how their dogs apprehended suspects. Others described dogs who specialized in narcotics or bomb detection. But Kaiser had always shown an instinct to protect individuals rather than chase criminals down. He'd participated in standard drills, sure, and he did well. Yet something about him made the trainers say that his true strength lay in empathy. And with each passing day, Isabel felt that truth more deeply. At home, her aunt noticed the difference. Isabel's shoulders no longer slumped when she came inside. Her voice held a slight lilt of optimism. "You're glowing," her aunt teased one evening. "If I didn't know better, I'd think you found a secret sweetheart." Isabel laughed. "I guess I have. He just has 4 paws and a tail." Then her expression grew thoughtful. "But I keep reminding myself, this is still temporary. They haven't formally decided. If something changes, if the department needs him for a more traditional assignment, let's focus on what we can do right now," her aunt said gently. "You've done your part. If it's meant to be, they'll see that you're the right match." On a crisp Thursday morning, as Isabel practiced walking a curved path behind the training center, Grace's phone buzzed. She answered with a brusque yes and listened. Kaiser halted at Isabel's side as if sensing a shift in the trainer's energy. After a minute of curt replies, Grace ended the call and approached. "That was Detective Riley. One suspect from your attack was spotted late last night. When patrol cars moved in, he slipped away, but not before threatening that the blind girl would regret talking to the cops. Grace paused. They're worried he might try something more aggressive if cornered. Isabel's mouth went dry. So he knows I gave a statement? Apparently, yes, or at least he thinks so. The detective suggests you stay at your aunt's place or maybe stay with a friend. He also insists on more immediate protection. Kaiser paced anxiously between them. The news seemed to heighten his alertness, as though he detected the spike in Isabel's heartbeat. Grace set a hand on the shepherd's back. Given this turn of events, I'm ready to recommend that Kaiser be assigned to you on a trial basis starting now. The department can't finalize the paperwork instantly, but we have enough grounds for an emergency detail. Are you comfortable with that? She swallowed, adrenaline beating through her veins. Yes, I am, whatever it takes. Then let's skip a few steps and get you set up. We'll have a field harness delivered to your aunt's house tonight. You'll need to keep your phone on you at all times. If anything feels off, call me or the police immediately. Though she was rattled by the threat, Isabel felt a deep relief hearing that Kaiser might stay by her side. As they walked back into the center's main building, the dog remained close, pressing lightly against her leg as though promising he would guard her from all harm. In that moment, she realized that their union had evolved into something bigger than a training experiment. He was her shield against the darkness she could not see, her companion in a life that constantly tested the boundaries of her independence. When the day's session ended, Grace offered to drop Isabel at home personally, with Kaiser in tow. Her aunt greeted them at the door, eyes flicking warily up and down the quiet street. The worry in her expression was evident, but relief flooded her features at the sight of Kaiser, fully outfitted in a dark harness. I'm glad you're here, she murmured to Grace, then turned to address the dog. And I'm glad you're here too, Kaiser. He responded by calmly stepping inside, scanning the small living room with a discerning gaze. Isabel set her cane against the wall, feeling a sense of odd security she hadn't known in weeks. Yes, fear still lurked at the edges of her mind, but Kaiser's presence gave her strength. If the thieves ever returned, they would face a protector who had already proven his courage. Over dinner, they hashed out details. Kaiser would sleep in the living room or at Isabel's bedside if needed. She would continue daily training to maintain and deepen their bond. Her aunt vowed to check in with the police regularly for updates on the suspects. And though the official contract with the department remained pending, all parties agreed that until the situation settled, Kaiser's place was with Isabel. That night, after the lights were turned low, Isabel moved carefully through the hallway, one hand skimming the wall out of habit. Kaiser followed, his nails clicking softly on the hardwood floor. Once inside her bedroom, she patted the edge of the bed. He hopped up, then lay beside her, ears perked. She tucked her legs underneath the blanket, leaning toward him. I'm so grateful, she whispered, lightly running her fingers through his thick coat. In the silence that followed, she could almost imagine he replied that he too was grateful for this unlikely connection. Somewhere out there in Oakwood, danger still lurked. But within these walls, for this single moment, she felt safe. They would face whatever challenges came next, together. Morning light seeped through the narrow gap in the curtains, illuminating the living room where Kaiser lay curled by the couch. Isabel's aunt had cleared a space, pushing aside the small coffee table so the German shepherd's bed could fit snugly near the wall. Though the arrangement was temporary, the house already felt different with his steady presence. When Isabel emerged from her bedroom, tapping her cane lightly against the doorframe, Kaiser lifted his head in quiet greeting. She smiled at the sound of his gentle thump on the floor, a soothing drumbeat that told her he was awake and ready. By now, several days had passed since Detective Riley's warning that the thieves might be seeking revenge. Anxiety hovered in the household, but the daily routine continued. Isabel prepared for another shift at Oakwood Public School, where her volunteer work couldn't simply be abandoned because of fear. Her aunt insisted on driving her, though, until the suspects were caught. Kaiser, of course, accompanied them. When they arrived in the school parking lot, the tension in Isabel's chest eased the moment she felt Kaiser's harness snug around her hand. Oakwood staff had recently agreed to the experimental arrangement. Each time Isabel entered the building, an administrator noted Kaiser's presence, ensuring no confusion arose about why a police-trained dog was wandering the halls. Yet the reaction from students and teachers was overwhelmingly positive. Children passing in the hallway would gasp at the sight of the handsome shepherd, some of them asking if they could pet him. Isabel found herself smiling more than ever, often saying, "He's working right now," but allowing brief pats on his head whenever Grace confirmed it was acceptable. That day, as she guided her small group of Braille learners through a reading exercise, she sensed the children's fascination growing stronger by the minute. Mid-lesson, a timid voice piped up, "Miss Isabel, can Kaiser help us read?" A second grader named Dina leaned forward in her chair, her own white cane propped against the side of the table. Isabel laughed softly, explaining that Kaiser might not be able to read Braille, but he was great at listening. She invited Dina to come closer, placing the girl's hand on the dog's back. The resulting giggles lit up the entire room, the sense of wonder overshadowing any lingering fear from the recent attack. Still, Isabel didn't fool herself. The threat remained. When the final bell rang and the halls emptied, she waited for her aunt out in the courtyard. Kaiser's ears stayed perked, scanning every stray sound. The lingering dread of footsteps behind her made her heart pound, but with Kaiser so near, she felt shielded. Today, fortunately, no suspicious characters lurked by the fences. Across town, Detective Riley was poring over fresh leads at his desk. The grainy footage from a neighborhood store camera had finally yielded a partial identification. The taller suspect was believed to be a man named Willis Price, a small-time criminal who specialized in quick muggings and petty theft. Price was known for picking targets he considered easy: elderly residents, lone students, or anyone who seemed unable to fight back. The fact that he'd encountered a well-trained shepherd still chafed him, according to informants. A second man, shorter and leaner, might be Price's cousin. That was all the department had. As Riley scrolled through digital mugshots, he muttered curses under his breath. The men had vanished into Oakwood's sprawl. Every day they went uncaptured meant Isabel was still at risk. Late afternoon found Isabel and Kaiser in a back room at the K-9 Center, where Grace guided them through specialized drills. Because the pilot program involved both personal assistance and protection, they focused on emergency commands. If Kaiser ever sensed immediate danger, he would pull Isabel sharply to alert her. She had to be ready to follow that abrupt movement without panicking. Repeatedly, Grace created mock scenarios. A trainer posed as an aggressor, stepping into their path or feigning an attempt to grab Isabel's purse. It unnerved her to relive that tension, but with each practice run, Kaiser displayed unwavering commitment. He placed himself between her and the threat, body poised, low growls resonating in his throat. Then, when Grace called him back, he promptly returned to her side with calm composure. Panting slightly, Isabel sank onto a bench in the corner, Kaiser beside her. Grace handed her a water bottle. "You're doing really well," the trainer remarked. "I know it's hard, especially given what happened, but your reaction times are improving. You're starting to trust his pull instead of resisting." Isabel took a long sip, breathing carefully to steady her pulse. "It helps knowing he's there. Every time he responds, I feel my fear loosen just a bit." Grace nodded, glancing at her watch. "Time to wrap for the day. I'll walk you both out." They passed through the courtyard, where a few other K-9s were practicing with their handlers. Each dog wore a distinct harness designating specialized tasks, bomb detection, narcotics, search and rescue. Isabel couldn't help feeling that, in spite of everything, she'd stumbled into a small miracle. Kaiser was a gifted police K-9, but something deeper in his nature had brought him to her side that day at the school. That sense of destiny buoyed her spirits. Meanwhile, in a rundown apartment on the far edge of Oakwood, Willis Price seethed. Rumors had reached him that the blind woman he and his partner tried to rob had not only identified him to the police, but was under the special protection of a K-9. He scoffed at the idea that a dog could keep him from getting what he wanted, but he couldn't shake the memory of those snarls and barks. Even so, his pride boiled, fueling a determination to prove that no one, including the cops, had the upper hand. His cousin lounged in a battered chair nearby, flipping through channels on a decades-old television. The ambiance was stale, the living room cluttered with crumpled fast food wrappers and a lingering stench of cigarette smoke. "You see that dog again?" his cousin muttered. "And you better run. Ain't no point risking it." Willis kicked aside a soda can. "She can't even see. We catch her alone, we finish the job." He ignored his cousin's skeptical grunt. A plan simmered in his mind, a plan that involved tracking her routine, waiting for the perfect moment. He refused to be thwarted by a German shepherd. Pride and desperation made a volatile mix, urging him to do something reckless. At the other end of Oakwood, Isabel finished dinner with her aunt, a quiet meal of stir-fried vegetables and rice. Kaiser lay by the door, occasionally lifting his head to watch them. A hush had settled over the house, but a tension remained beneath the surface. Isabel felt it every time her aunt's eyes flicked anxiously toward the window. The knowledge that the suspects were still on the loose gnawed at both women's peace of mind. After dinner, Isabel ran her fingers over the day's mail, which her aunt sorted to help her find what was useful: a Braille magazine subscription, a bank statement, and a flyer for a charity event at the school. She paused on the flyer's raised text: "Oakwood Community Fundraiser. Let's build a safer neighborhood." The timing felt too poignant to ignore. She turned to her aunt. "They're hosting an event to raise money for better school security. It's next week in the gym. Maybe we should go." Her aunt exhaled. "I don't want you out at night until those criminals are caught. But if you have Kaiser with you, perhaps it's manageable." "It's important," Isabel said quietly. "People need to see that even though I was attacked, I'm not hiding away. And showing up with a police K-9 might reassure other families." Her aunt smiled gently. "Then we'll make it happen. I'm sure Grace or Detective Riley will approve. They probably want the community to know the pilot program is in motion." As they spoke, Kaiser rose and wandered over, nudging Isabel's knee. She patted him. "You want to show everyone how great you are, huh?" He let out a subdued woof in reply, as though seconding the idea. Days drifted by in a blur of training and caution. Detective Riley checked in regularly, sending updates that never seemed to change. The suspects were still at large, though leads pointed to them hiding somewhere on the city's fringes. The upcoming fundraiser became a sliver of hope in the community's collective gloom. Flyers were posted, phone calls were made, and local parents planned to attend in droves, eager to support new measures that might keep their children safe. Finally, the evening of the event arrived. The school gymnasium brimmed with chatter and excitement. Vendors set up tables laden with donated goods for silent auctions. Homemade crafts, gift baskets, even a giant stuffed teddy bear that towered nearly 4 feet high. A small stage at the front displayed banners welcoming the crowd. Isabel arrived with her aunt, guided by Kaiser's sure step. As soon as they entered, people hushed, then began murmuring. Some recognized her from local news stories referencing the blind volunteer rescued by a K-9. Camera flashes popped here and there, though she could only hear the mechanical clicks. Detective Riley waved them over to a corner where a local reporter was asking questions. "Glad you made it," the detective said. "We're using tonight to highlight what the police and school board are doing. The presence of you and Kaiser really drives home why it matters." Isabel's cheeks warmed at the attention. She answered a handful of questions for the reporter, voice steady in spite of her nerves. "This is a pilot program," she concluded, "but I hope it becomes something permanent. If just one person feels safer because of Kaiser's presence, then it's worth it." Nearby, children squealed with delight whenever Kaiser passed, some reaching out to stroke his flank. Isabel's aunt helped set boundaries. "He's working," she'd say gently, but allowed quick greetings once it was clear Kaiser could handle the chaos. The gym's microphone squealed, and the principal stood at the stage, calling for attention. She welcomed everyone and explained how the funds would be used to improve fences, install additional lighting, and hire part-time security detail if needed. Applause filled the air, underpinned by an unmistakable sense of unity. Yet outside, a figure hovered in the shadow of a lamppost at the far edge of the parking lot. Willis Price glowered at the bustling crowd. He'd slipped in among the parked cars, scanning for a glimpse of the woman with the cane and the big dog. Spotting them at last, a sardonic twist curled his mouth. Maybe it was unwise to approach her here, with so many people around. But the temptation to prove he wasn't afraid of that dog sank its claws into him. He edged closer, staying out of range of the lights, waiting for a chance to test his nerve against a shepherd who had humiliated him once already. Inside the gym, Isabel felt something shift in the atmosphere. Kaiser stiffened at her side, ears suddenly alert, his gaze riveted on the exit doors, where a few stragglers milled about. She frowned, heart skittering. "Kaiser?" she whispered, gripping his harness. He let out a low rumble, so soft that only she could sense its vibration. Her pulse quickened. A wave of dread rippled through her. She couldn't see what was there, but she trusted the dog's instinct. Slowly, she reached for Detective Riley's sleeve, leaning to murmur, "Kaiser is tense. Something's off." Detective Riley inclined his head, following the direction of Isabel's hushed warning. Her hand tightened on his sleeve as Kaiser fixed his gaze on the far set of double doors. A subtle tension rippled through the German shepherd's posture, muzzle slightly raised, ears rigid. Though the bustling crowd continued its cheerful chatter, an undercurrent of unease swept over Isabel. She had come to trust Kaiser's intuition. If he sensed a threat, it was likely real. Riley scanned the gym, noticing a cluster of people near the exit. Parents were guiding children outside, presumably to catch rides home. A few staff members stood exchanging pleasantries. Everything seemed routine, but Kaiser's low growl suggested otherwise. Riley gestured for a nearby officer to keep watch, then turned back to Isabel. "Stay close to me," he said quietly. "If something's going on, we'll handle it, but let's be ready." Isabel's aunt, sensing the shift, joined them. "What is it?" she whispered. Her eyes flicked worriedly to the tense shepherd. He stood rooted at Isabel's side, as if debating whether to rush forward or remain to guard her. Detective Riley gave a minuscule shake of his head, signaling caution. "Kaiser's on alert," he said under his breath. "Let's not panic anyone. Just keep an eye out." Moments later, the principal finished her remarks on stage, thanked everyone for coming, and concluded the fundraiser. Applause rang through the gym and families began flowing toward the exits. The general mood was warm, almost festive, but behind that convivial energy, Riley and Isabel's aunt remained watchful. Kaiser's muzzle turned left and right, following some scent or movement too subtle for human detection. Outside, Willis Price lingered behind a half-lit section of the parking lot, face partly shrouded by a baseball cap. He cursed under his breath as more people spilled out, the glow of overhead lamps spotlighting them. Too many witnesses for a direct confrontation. Then he caught sight of a figure accompanied by a large dog stepping through the doorway. The dog was big, ear tips alert against the night sky. That had to be the shepherd from before. Price's pulse pounded. The girl with the cane was there, wearing a light jacket, her arm hooked through another woman's. The detective that had questioned half the neighborhood followed behind them. His cousin had refused to join, calling it stupid to waltz near the cops. But Price's pride wouldn't let him rest. He'd told himself just to observe, maybe intimidate the blind woman, remind her that he was still out here. His eyes flicked across the lot, seeking a quick approach. But the presence of that dog made his fingers twitch with nervous energy. Even so, the memory of the beast snarling at him only fueled his desire to prove he wasn't afraid. He skirted around a nearby vehicle, ducking low, waiting for the group to move farther from the building. Isabel's aunt paused at the sidewalk, rummaging in her purse for the car keys. Detective Riley remained a few steps away, exchanging final words with a pair of uniformed officers. Kaiser's stance hadn't relaxed. Isabel heard him emit a soft rumble, too quiet for anyone else in the immediate area to notice. Her grip on his harness tightened. "Auntie," she whispered, "I think he's here." Her aunt glanced around, but the lot was full of milling families heading to their cars. "What do we do?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. The fear in her eyes echoed exactly how Isabel felt inside, though Isabel fought to stay composed. The detective, overhearing, returned to them. "Come on," he urged, guiding them gently by the shoulder. "My unmarked cruiser is right over there. If you'd prefer, I can drive you home." "But our car?" her aunt began. "We'll arrange for another officer to bring it later," Riley insisted. "No sense taking chances tonight." His tone conveyed a quiet urgency that neither Isabel nor her aunt questioned. They started walking, Kaiser matching Isabel's nervous pace. Each step felt heavier than usual, as if dread weighed on her ankles. She kept her chin high, letting Kaiser's presence anchor her. The voices around them dwindled as more families cleared out, leaving the parking lot emptier. Yellowish lamps buzzed overhead. Their faint flicker seemed to create dancing shadows on the asphalt. Suddenly, Kaiser whipped his head to the left, barking. Isabel stumbled as he jerked her harness. It was a clear sign a threat was near. Detective Riley cursed, drawing closer. "What is it, boy? Show me." The dog pivoted again, muzzle low, then barked more urgently. Riley scanned the area. A figure emerged from behind a parked SUV just for a second, then ducked away again. Riley caught the movement in his peripheral vision. "There," he muttered, reaching for the radio on his belt. "We've got a potential suspect." Another bark from Kaiser confirmed it. The crowd still leaving the building paused, a few startled by the shepherd's thunderous alarm. Willis Price's heart hammered. He realized the element of surprise was gone. He swore under his breath and broke into a run, weaving between parked cars. Detective Riley shouted for the suspect to stop, but Price ignored the warning. Riley sprinted after him, motioning for an officer at the far end of the lot to cut off the escape route. Meanwhile, Isabel's aunt hovered protectively near her niece, alarmed by the chaos. Kaiser strained at his harness. His training urged him to aid in pursuit, but Grace's instructions had emphasized that Isabel was now his priority. Keep her safe. He paced in agitation, glancing between the fleeing suspect and the woman he was assigned to protect. Isabel picked up on his signals, tense with adrenaline. A part of her wanted to flee inside for safety, but the building's doors had already closed and staff were busy locking up. The entire parking lot felt like a stage for this confrontation. Even as Detective Riley gave chase, Price twisted between vehicles, leaped over a low hedge, and ducked out of sight. The second officer tried to intercept, but was caught off guard by Price's sudden change of direction. Within seconds, he'd vanished into the deeper darkness beyond the lampposts. Riley skidded to a stop, jaw clenched in frustration. "He's gone," he yelled. He then radioed for backup, giving a terse description. Possible match to Willis Price, male, medium build, dark cap, last seen heading north near the perimeter fence. Worried onlookers mumbled among themselves. Some hurried their children away, anxious at the prospect of a criminal prowling so close to the school. Isabel stood stiffly, feeling Kaiser press against her leg in reassurance. She hated how powerless she felt, how the fear she'd been fighting returned with brutal force. Her aunt drew her in for a shaky hug, whispering, "We're okay. He didn't do anything. We're okay." A few minutes later, Detective Riley returned, still breathing hard. "We have more units canvassing the streets. Sorry you had to see all that." Isabel dipped her head. "I didn't see anything," she murmured, a slight irony in her tone. "But I heard Kaiser. He knew someone was there." Riley nodded grimly. "He definitely recognized Price. That was him. If we're lucky, we'll get a lead from the search. But it looks like he had a vehicle stashed. Ran off too quickly." They decided it was best for Isabel and her aunt to ride in Riley's cruiser. One of the uniformed officers took custody of the aunt's car, planning to deliver it later. Throughout the short drive, Kaiser sprawled in the back seat beside Isabel, eyes shifting between the windows, still on high alert. Isabel's aunt held her hand, neither speaking much, each lost in worry. When they reached the house, Riley escorted them inside. Kaiser, as if still sensing the tension, did a patrol of each room, sniffing corners and behind furniture before returning. It might have been a comedic sight, this big shepherd striding around a modest living room, but tonight no one felt like laughing. Once the space was declared clear, Riley paused at the threshold. "Lock up tight," he advised. "I'll have a patrol car pass by hourly. Let's see if we can track that guy down tonight." They thanked him, and the detective slipped out, leaving the home unnervingly quiet. Isabel turned to Kaiser, who stood by the window, ears perked. She sensed his vigilance. The quake of adrenaline still coursed in her veins. "It's all right," she whispered, though she didn't fully believe it herself. Her aunt sat on the couch, exhaling shakily. Time drifted. They tried watching a bit of television, but the news only replayed local crimes, fueling more anxiety. Eventually, her aunt retired for the night, leaving Isabel with Kaiser in the living room. Outside, the hush of the neighborhood felt almost too calm. The subtle whir of a patrol car passing by served as the only reminder that trouble was out there. If Price had come so close once, who was to say he wouldn't try again? Isabel slipped to the floor, resting her back against the couch. Kaiser settled beside her, body warm against her thigh. She stroked his ears, feeling the rhythm of his breathing. "Thank you," she whispered, thinking back to how he had alerted everyone. "You're the reason I'm not a victim again." His only reply was the comforting sound of his exhale. She struggled to sleep that night, her mind replaying the chaotic scene. Fear had a way of lodging in her soul, rekindling every time she pictured that fleeting glimpse of a figure in the parking lot. But each time the fear threatened to pull her under, she recalled Kaiser's steadfast vigilance. He was more than just an extra set of eyes. He was her sentry, an unwavering presence that insisted she was not alone in the dark. Morning arrived to find her curled on the couch, still dressed from the night before, with Kaiser dozing near her feet. A knock at the door startled them both. The dog sprang up instantly. Isabel steadied her pulse, then answered, leaning on her cane. It was a uniformed officer delivering her aunt's car keys and a note from Detective Riley. "No success in finding the suspect, but we'll keep trying. Be vigilant. Call me if you notice anything unusual." Isabel shut the door, letting out a weary sigh. Another day in Oakwood, overshadowed by the knowledge that someone dangerous roamed free, specifically targeting her. Yet as she turned to face Kaiser, who had trotted up behind her, she recalled a piece of advice from Grace. Sometimes the best defense against fear is facing it with a loyal ally. She patted Kaiser gently. Ready for whatever comes next? His quiet wag and steady gaze seemed to say yes. The phone rang. Isabel's aunt answered and soon called Isabel over. "Grace is on the line," she announced, handing off the receiver. Isabel lifted it to her ear, heart thudding. Had the department changed its mind about her arrangement with Kaiser? But Grace's voice held warmth. "Hey, just checking in, making sure you're all right after last night." She paused. "I also wanted to let you know the pilot program contract has been approved. Kaiser can officially stay with you, at least until we're sure the threat is gone. If all goes well, we'll extend it." Relief surged through Isabel so swiftly she nearly dropped the phone. That's amazing. Thank you, Grace." She sank into a chair, hardly believing the news. Kaiser let out a small, inquisitive whine as though asking her to explain the sudden joy in her voice. Grace continued, "We'll finalize paperwork soon, but for now, keep following the protocols. And remember, if you sense any danger, call for help immediately. Kaiser's good, but you shouldn't rely on him as your sole protection. He's a partner, not a shield you can hide behind." "I understand," Isabel said softly. "He and I will do our best." They hung up, and Isabel relayed the information to her aunt. A mixture of relief and lingering apprehension filled the small kitchen, but a spark of hope too. Hope that life could inch back toward normalcy. She placed a hand on Kaiser's broad head. He seemed to sense her uplifted mood, thumping his tail lightly. In that quiet moment, neither of them knew how soon their commitment would be tested or how deeply their bond would matter when the threat became far more real than a glimpse in the dark. That afternoon, Isabel and Kaiser went through their usual routine of short walks around the neighborhood supervised by her aunt. Despite the tension still hanging over them, it felt strangely normal to stroll along the sidewalks, the dog's harness securely in hand. She listened to the soft scuff of her feet on concrete and the rhythmic tap of her cane, but what reassured her most was Kaiser's calm, guiding presence. He navigated around curbs, nudged her gently away from uneven paving stones, and even paused whenever he detected oncoming pedestrians, as though making sure she was comfortable in each encounter. Though the walk was brief, every small success gave Isabel a renewed sense of freedom. Before, the memory of the attack had confined her to her aunt's car, or the safety of short, anxious journeys from the door to the curb. Now, with Kaiser, she could rediscover the independent spirit she'd cultivated over the years. Her aunt trailed several paces behind, watching protectively. Seeing Isabel reclaim a slice of normal life moved her deeply. When they returned to the house, a message blinked on the answering machine, Detective Riley's voice, reminding them of the extra patrols near Oakwood Public School and urging caution if Isabel insisted on volunteering again. She ran her fingers across the machine's braille overlay, then pressed play. "No new leads on Price," Riley said, the slight tension in his tone betraying his frustration. "But we're making progress. Call me if you notice anything strange." Isabel sighed, deleting the message. Kaiser nudged her shin, and she interpreted it as his encouragement not to let fear dominate. Her aunt offered a small smile. "At least they haven't found any sign that Price is still lurking around here," she said. "Maybe he's left town." But doubt lingered. People like Willis Price rarely gave up that easily, especially if they felt pride had been wounded by a half-blind volunteer and a German shepherd. The next day at the K-9 Center, Grace reinforced advanced drills with Isabel and Kaiser, emphasizing real-world distractions. "We'll replicate the noise of a busy street," Grace announced, setting up speakers that blared a mix of car horns, crowd chatter, and even sirens. "When Kaiser halts or changes direction, follow his lead. Trust him to guide you away from danger." They practiced for hours, sweat beading on Isabel's brow as she responded to Kaiser's cues. Though more than once she faltered, nearly colliding with a plastic traffic cone, his quick corrections saved her. By midday, her muscles were trembling from the constant tension of stopping, pivoting, and listening intently. Yet she pushed through, determined. Near the end of the session, Grace pulled Isabel aside. "The department is really impressed with your dedication," the trainer said. "They see how strongly Kaiser has bonded with you. That's uncommon, especially in such a short time. If you want to make this arrangement permanent, we may be able to shift his official assignment from purely police work to a dual role as your partner." Isabel's face lit up, though a small part of her felt a gnawing caution. "I'd love that," she admitted. "But only if it's best for him. I know he was meant for patrol duty." Grace's eyes softened. Patrol or not, a K-9's core mission is to protect and serve. He's doing exactly that, just in a more specialized way. Then her voice lowered. "In any case, it's not finalized. We're waiting on the precinct's final sign-off and the results of an evaluation next week, but it's looking positive." Riding home in the back of a staff car, Kaiser sprawled contentedly with his head on Isabel's lap, resting after the vigorous training. She let her fingers drift over the ridges of his fur, marveling at how quickly he'd become indispensable to her sense of safety. Each day he worked by her side, her confidence grew. If not for the lurking threat of Price, her life might almost have felt normal again. But Price hadn't left Oakwood. He spent his time slinking in the grimy back streets, keeping a low profile. Late one evening, he met up with his cousin in a shuttered parking garage to finalize a new plan. The tension in the air was palpable, lit by a single overhead bulb that flickered like a failing heartbeat. "You can't keep messing with that girl," his cousin muttered, nervously glancing at the shadows. "The cops are all over this. They got patrols. You're gonna get locked up for real this time." Price shook his head, face twisted with stubborn rage. "I ain't letting her get away with it. If we do it right, they won't even know it was me. I just need to lure her out somewhere with less attention." He thought of the day he'd encountered them at the school fundraiser, how close he'd come to confronting that dog again. He wanted an advantage, a moment to prove his nerve. He refused to let a blind nobody ruin his so-called reputation. His cousin sucked a breath. "I'm out, man. I'm not doing it." "Fine," Price snapped, stuffing his hands in his jacket. "I'll handle it myself. But don't come crying when you need cash." His cousin spat on the concrete and stalked away, leaving Price to brood in the flickering light, mind churning with ever more reckless ideas. As the days ticked by, Isabel kept up her volunteer sessions. More teachers asked her to help guide children in tactile reading, and she gladly obliged. She arrived with Kaiser in the mornings, her aunt waiting in the staff lounge or running errands in the area. Once or twice, the school principal or Detective Riley dropped by to check on her. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, and the students loved having Kaiser around. Yet Isabel couldn't fully relax. She felt Price's unseen presence like a shadow at her back. One cloudy afternoon, as she left the building with Kaiser, she heard footsteps hurrying to catch up. At first, she froze, every muscle alert, until a breathless voice said, "Wait, Miss Isabel, it's me." Dina, the second grader from her tutoring group, gently touched her elbow. "I forgot my Braille book in the classroom. Can you help me find it?" Isabel's dread eased. "Of course," she replied, exhaling relief. "Where did you leave it?" Dina hesitated. "I think on the windowsill near the coat hooks. My bus is coming soon, and I'm scared I'll be late." Isabel nodded, stepping back toward the school doors. "We'll help you get it. Let's be quick." She guided Dina inside, feeling Kaiser maintain his steady vigilance. The corridors were mostly empty now, echoing with the quiet hum of fluorescent lights. They reached the classroom to find the door already open. Isabel slid her cane gently across the threshold, letting Kaiser lead them inside. Dina darted toward the windowsill, rummaging. "Found it," she whispered triumphantly, hugging the Braille book. "Thank you for coming back." Isabel smiled in the direction of the child's voice, about to suggest they hurry to the bus when Kaiser stiffened without warning. A low, rumbling growl rose from his throat. Alarmed, Isabel angled her head. "Kaiser, what is it?" Dina stopped short, clinging to the book. Silence pressed on the room. Kaiser's growl intensified. Isabel's heart hammered. She heard the faintest scuff of a shoe from the back corner, near a supply closet. A presence. Adrenaline shot through her veins. She fumbled for her phone, but her fingers trembled and it slipped from her grasp, clattering to the floor. Before Isabel could stoop to grab it, a male voice hissed, "Don't move." Fear iced through her. The voice was unfamiliar, but it carried the same menacing edge she remembered from that day. Dina whimpered softly, retreating behind Isabel, who managed to steady her cane. Kaiser positioned himself in front, baring his teeth. "Kid," the voice growled, "nobody wants trouble. Just stay quiet." He probably hadn't expected a child to be here, but seemed determined to press forward. Isabel realized with horror that this was likely Price or an accomplice. Had they followed her into the school? The tension strangled her breath. She heard the squeak of a floor tile as the intruder took a step forward. Kaiser erupted into a thunderous bark. The sound reverberated off the walls, sending Dina trembling. The man spat a curse. "Shut that dog up." Instinct kicked in. Isabel reached behind her to steady Dina, her voice shaky yet firm. "Don't come closer," she warned. "I'll call the police." "Go ahead," he sneered, though the audible strain in his tone suggested he was rattled by Kaiser's presence. "They won't get here fast enough." Kaiser barked again, more ferociously. Through the thick swirl of her fear, Isabel grasped that the dog was giving her a chance. He was stalling the intruder, buying time. Dina sniffled, barely holding back tears. Isabel prayed someone in the hallway would hear the commotion, or that Dina's bus driver might come looking. The man advanced another step, and Kaiser lunged, snapping at the air. It was a trained intimidation move, not meant to connect, but enough to force the intruder back. "You think I'm scared of a dog?" he spat, but his voice quavered. If Price had no easy route out, he might lash out in desperation. Isabel steadied herself, forcing air into her lungs. She had to do something, anything. Her phone lay on the floor, out of reach. Dina was cowering, paralyzed. "Dina," she whispered, voice taut, "stay behind me, and when I say run, you run, okay?" The child hiccuped a tearful "yes." Kaiser roared another bark, launching forward enough to terrify the man into stumbling. In that split second, Isabel hissed, "Run!" She reached out, guiding Dina toward the open doorway. Kaiser, responding to her single-word command, "Protect!" forced the intruder to retreat another few steps with a flurry of snarling. Feet pounded the hallway as Dina fled, calling for help. Isabel's pulse thundered, panic weaving with a fierce resolve to keep the child safe. She heard the man curse again, his frustration turning to fury. He lunged in her direction, perhaps hoping to shove her aside, but Kaiser intercepted, teeth bared. The air crackled with the tension of a potential attack. One false move could mean serious harm for either the intruder or the dog. Time stretched painfully. Then from the corridor came adult voices, teachers or staff responding to Dina's cries. The man let out a guttural snarl of his own and bolted, footsteps tearing across the floor. Kaiser barked, wanting to chase, but his duty was to Isabel. He stayed. She sagged against a desk, feeling her entire body quake. Moments later, two teachers and the principal burst in. "Isabel, are you hurt?" The voices were frantic. She shook her head, hardly able to speak. Kaiser stood at her side, panting, adrenaline still coursing through his muscles. Another teacher hurried after the fleeing suspect, but it was too late. He had vanished through a side exit that led to the back parking lot. It took time for the chaos to subside. Police were called immediately, and Detective Riley arrived in minutes, face dark with concern. Dina, sobbing, was comforted by staff. Isabel recounted everything in fits and starts, trembling too hard to remain steady. Kaiser remained pressed to her leg as though reassuring her he would never let harm come her way. Riley listened grimly. "We'll comb every corner of this block," he promised. "Sounds like Price. He's getting bolder. But you did great." She didn't feel great. She felt terrorized, helpless. Her only solace was the knowledge that Kaiser had prevented a worse outcome. If not for him, Price might have cornered her completely. Dina might have been harmed. Her breath wavered, a sick swirl in her stomach. She took hold of Kaiser's fur, grateful for the anchor he provided. The detective saw the raw fear in her face. "We'll keep you under watch," he said, voice solemn. "Until we catch him, I'm assigning more officers to this school. And you, Isabel, maybe it's time we talk about taking a break from volunteering, at least until Price is in custody." Isabel swallowed. Her pride wanted to protest. These children needed her, but the sense of near catastrophe still flickered in her chest. "I'll think about it," she said shakily. While staff led Dina to the nurse's office for comfort, the principal insisted on walking Isabel and Kaiser to the main entrance, where her aunt, looking pale and frantic, waited. Once outside, the gloom of an overcast sky wrapped them like a warning of worse storms ahead. As Isabel climbed into her aunt's car, Kaiser hopping in after her, she tried to steady her breathing. Price wasn't just a passing threat. He was determined, reckless, and terrifyingly close. Inwardly, she prayed that the dog's unwavering loyalty and the detective's vigilance would be enough to keep them both safe in the uncertain days ahead. Over the next few days, Oakwood Public School went into a heightened state of alert. Officers now patrolled the corridors, and a police cruiser regularly circled the block. Though the principal assured the community that classes were safe, the faculty moved more cautiously, closing doors promptly and escorting younger students during transitions. Isabel, shaken by the harrowing classroom confrontation, reluctantly agreed to take a pause from her volunteer duties. She wrestled with guilt. Those children needed her calm guidance, but the possibility of Price targeting her again couldn't be ignored. At home, her aunt tried to create a sense of normalcy, cooking hearty meals and playing the radio at cheerful volumes. Yet a taut undercurrent hung in the air. Each time the phone rang, they both tensed, wondering if it would be Detective Riley with news of Price's capture or worse, an update that he'd struck again. At night, Isabel lay awake, replaying the memory of that threatening voice hissed from the shadows, Kaiser's fierce bark echoing through the quiet classroom. If not for him, she'd have been cornered and helpless. The realization made her shiver. Meanwhile, Kaiser remained her steadfast companion. The dog paced the house during the day, sniffing at doors and windows. When they ventured outside, he walked with heightened vigilance, reacting to anything out of place. On one occasion, a sudden noise, a trash can tipping over in the alley, made him jerk protectively in front of Isabel, ears flat, ready to defend. Though it turned out to be a harmless mishap, the incident reminded her of how on edge both of them had become. Detective Riley dropped by one evening with an update. His expression wore the fatigue of too many late shifts. "We're leaning on local informants," he explained grimly. "Price has gone to ground somewhere, possibly a vacant house on the far side of Oakwood. We've come close twice, but he keeps slipping away." He accepted a cup of tea from Isabel's aunt, then glanced at Kaiser, who watched him steadily. "I'm sorry it's taking this long," Riley added. "I know every day feels like a risk for you." Isabel shook her head. "I understand you're doing all you can. Just be careful. He's not afraid to show up anywhere." "Indeed," Riley said with a nod. "We suspect he might strike out again if he thinks he won't get caught." so don't let your guard down." After he left, the house felt emptier than before. Even the warmth of the overhead lights and the smell of dinner cooking failed to banish the tension. Isabel retreated to her bedroom, sinking onto the edge of her bed. Kaiser followed close, his paws clicking softly on the floor. She rested her palm over his fur, trying to take comfort in his presence. "We have to stay strong," she murmured, though who she was reassuring, herself or the dog, remained unclear. The next morning, a knock sounded at the door, and Grace stepped inside. She carried a thick folder of documents and wore an encouraging smile. "Paperwork day," she announced. "I told you the department was finalizing the pilot program for real. Looks like they want to expedite it. Usually these forms would take months, but given the circumstances, they're pushing it through." Isabel felt a rush of gratitude. So Kaiser's assignment could become permanent? "That's the plan," Grace answered, settling at the kitchen table. "All we need are your signatures and some final checklists to show you understand the responsibilities of having a police-trained K-9. There'll be reviews every 6 months to ensure it's working well." Her aunt grabbed an extra chair, excitement mingled with relief. "This is wonderful. We'll abide by whatever guidelines you set." They spent the next hour discussing terms, Kaiser's feeding schedule, veterinarian visits, refresher courses at the K-9 Center, and legal disclaimers about the dog's specialized training. Isabel's aunt read through every paragraph aloud, so Isabel could follow along with the braille pages Grace had provided. By the end, the arrangement felt comprehensive, a synergy between the police department's interests and Isabel's personal safety. When all the signatures were complete, Grace leaned back in her chair, smiling. "Congratulations, you two. It's official. Kaiser is now your police partner dog, assigned to help you navigate your daily life and protect you if needed." She glanced at the shepherd, who lay sprawled at Isabel's feet. "Doesn't mean we won't keep working with you, but it's a milestone." Isabel exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The tension in her shoulders eased. Kaiser seemed to sense the moment's significance, sitting up and thumping his tail softly against the floor. She reached down to scratch behind his ears, an affectionate grin lighting her face. "Thank you, Grace. Really." "Don't thank me," Grace said with a wave of her hand. "You two did the hard work yourselves. Just promise me you'll keep me posted on any developments with Price. We've never had a K-9 assignment quite like this, so we're all learning as we go." The days that followed brought small victories. Without returning to the school, Isabel adjusted to a quieter routine at home, focusing on online courses she was taking to improve her advocacy skills for visually impaired students. Kaiser stayed close, occasionally performing playful gestures to cheer her. She discovered a surprising side to him. When relaxed, he loved to nuzzle her hand with gentle curiosity, as though seeking a moment of simple affection. He would fetch items her aunt deliberately placed around the house, bringing them obediently to Isabel if she called for them. His protective side never vanished, but she realized there was warmth and devotion beneath the disciplined exterior. Even so, the knowledge that Price roamed free weighed heavily. Detective Riley's calls brought updates that always ended in frustration. A rumor placed Price outside the city. Then local cameras spotted a figure matching his build in a convenience store near Oakwood's eastern border. Each time the trail went cold. "He's slippery," Riley would say grimly, "but we'll keep on him." One Friday evening, as the sun set behind the suburban rooftops, Isabel's aunt declared they should all go for a brief drive, just to break the monotony. With Kaiser in the back seat, they cruised through quieter parts of Oakwood, passing the old library and the city park that glowed under new street lamps. Once, the area had felt like a place of community solace. Now, every shadowed corner seemed fraught with potential danger, though the presence of patrol cars alleviated some concern. They paused at a small cafe with outdoor seating, carefully selecting a table in the bright circle cast by a lamppost. The few patrons nearby barely glanced at them, accustomed by now to seeing a strong German shepherd wearing a police harness. Isabel inhaled the aroma of coffee and pastries, trying to enjoy something normal again. Just as they placed their order, Kaiser shifted beside her, ears twitching. She tensed, the memory of his alerts always tied to trouble. A man exiting the cafe with a to-go cup walked slowly past their table, his footsteps scraping on the pavement. Isabel couldn't see him, but she heard that deliberate pacing, felt the way Kaiser's muscles quivered with suspicion. Her aunt followed the man with her gaze, frowning. He wore a hood pulled low, but from his silhouette and the line of his jaw, nothing suggested price. Relieved, she gave Isabel a small nod. The dog, however, took longer to settle. Even after the man disappeared, Kaiser remained watchful. It struck Isabel that she might be stuck in this half-alarmed state until the day Price was finally apprehended. She sipped her coffee, forcing herself to savor the creamy warmth, thinking about the children's laughter she missed at the school. The memory of Dina's frightened sobs in that classroom echoed in her mind, stoking the embers of fear. She exhaled, focusing on the dog at her side. Kaiser had proven he wouldn't waver. She had to find that same steadfastness in herself. That night when they returned home, her aunt lingered by the front window, scanning the street. Isabel patted her shoulder gently. "Are you okay?" she asked, voice soft. Her aunt sighed. "I'm just tired. Tired of waiting for the phone to ring. Tired of wondering if Price is around the next corner. You know?" Isabel nodded. "I do." She had Kaiser to calm her nerves, but it pained her to see how worried her aunt remained. "We can't let him control our lives, right?" "You're braver than you think," her aunt replied. "He won't break you or me. But I pray the police find him soon." Morning dawned bright, the weekend sun pouring through the windows. Before Isabel even finished breakfast, her phone buzzed. Detective Riley's number lit the screen. She answered quickly, heart clenching. "Yes. Did something happen?" Kaiser trotted over, sensing her anxiety. Riley's voice carried a tense edge. "We got a tip that Price was spotted near the old train depot early today. A few officers are heading there now. I wanted you to know in case he tries to come your way if we corner him." Isabel steadied herself. "So you might catch him?" "Possibly," he answered. "But I won't get your hopes up until it's confirmed. Just stay vigilant. Keep Kaiser with you. And if anything seems suspicious, call me." She thanked him and ended the call, relaying the news to her aunt. A glimmer of hope pulsed through the house. Maybe this ordeal was nearing its end. As the day wore on, though, no call came to announce Price's arrest. The hours ticked by, and the silence settled like an ominous cloud, reminding them that leads had fizzled before. At dusk, a different call arrived. Grace, who usually sounded upbeat, spoke in a hushed tone. "The station's in an uproar," she said. Price slipped away again. He hopped a fence by the depot and vanished into the industrial zone. "It's so frustrating." Isabel pressed a hand to her temple. "I see. Thanks for letting me know." "Look," Grace continued, "if you want, I can come by with a fellow handler and do a security check around your place. Not that Kaiser can't handle it, but sometimes it helps to have extra eyes." Isabel hesitated, then agreed. "Yes, please. My aunt and I would feel safer." An hour later, Grace arrived with a younger handler named Patrick. They did a sweep through the front yard, the side alley, and even the small backyard garden. Kaiser accompanied them, sniffing corners, ears darting at each rustle of leaves. Isabel's aunt peered from the kitchen door, tension clear in her posture. Though they found nothing suspicious, the inspection left them all feeling the weight of Price's persistent evasion. Grace offered a tight smile. "I wish I had better news, but rest assured, Kaiser will do his job if he tries to come near you. We'll keep in touch daily until this is settled." After the handlers departed, The house felt more fortified but still uneasy. Isabel's aunt busied herself tidying random drawers, a telltale sign of her nerves. Isabel sank onto the sofa, Kane resting at her side, Kaiser stretched along the floor. She let her hand linger on his back, tracing the outline of the harness strap. "At least we have each other," she whispered. The dog responded with a faint wag, as if to confirm they were a united front. She couldn't shake the sense that everything was building toward a final confrontation. Price had ventured into her school, had spied on her at a fundraiser, and lurked around Oakwood streets with dogged determination. Yet each time, Kaiser had stood guard, foiling the intruder's attempts. Even if the tension strangled her at times, she knew she wasn't the same frightened person who'd first been attacked. With Kaiser's partnership, she had found a deeper courage, a reminder of her own resilience. Sooner or later, Price would make a mistake. And when that moment came, Isabel intended to be ready, no longer the easy target he believed her to be, but a woman who had learned to walk in step with a defender trained to shield her from the worst shadows of the world. Early on a Tuesday morning, Isabel stood in her small front yard, letting the gentle warmth of the sun calm her nerves. Kaiser stood alert at her side, ears flicking toward each passing car. Ever since Grace's security sweep, the neighborhood had felt marginally safer, yet the knowledge that Price was still unaccounted for continued to weigh on everyone's mind. Her aunt joined her a moment later, locking the door and testing the handle twice. Even their simplest routines had grown cautious and methodical. "I'll drive you to the grocery store," her aunt said softly. "We can pick up extra supplies. Detective Riley mentioned there might be a storm rolling in tomorrow, so we should be prepared." Isabel nodded, adjusting her cane. "All right." She inhaled slowly, scanning the street with her other senses. A faint hum of traffic drifted from the main road, but nothing sounded out of place. Kaiser, however, maintained a subtle tension in his stance. "He never fully relaxes," she remarked half to herself. Her aunt sighed, giving the shepherd a gentle pat. "None of us can fully relax until Price is behind bars." They moved toward the car, and Kaiser jumped into the back seat. Despite her weariness, Isabel felt a flicker of gratitude. She couldn't imagine facing life without him by her side. The grocery trip was uneventful, aisles full of morning shoppers and cheerful music overhead. Kaiser stayed close as they navigated the produce section, garnering occasional curious looks. A few customers even recognized Isabel from local news segments, but no one approached too closely. The tension surrounding the Pilot K-9 assignment was well known in Oakwood, and folks respected her space. By the time they returned home, though, a sense of residual dread still gnawed at her. The department's repeated near misses with Price meant he could still appear anytime, anywhere. In the early afternoon, while Isabel studied at the kitchen table, the landline rang. Her aunt picked up, voice muffled by the next room's walls. Isabel strained to listen, hearing only low murmurs. Kaiser, as if sensing her heightened attention, rose from his spot by the couch and padded over to nudge her leg. She gave him a slight scratch behind the ears, mind spinning with possibilities. Finally, her aunt returned, expression carefully controlled. "That was the school," she said quietly. "They want to host a small ceremony to thank you for your volunteer work, especially since you had to take a break. They hope it'll reassure parents that the new security measures are working." Her tone faltered. "They want you to come tomorrow afternoon, publicly." A tremor ran through Isabel. "Tomorrow? But Price?" Her aunt nodded. "Yes, they're aware. They'll have extra officers there, and they think it might send a message that we're not letting him control the narrative. But it's up to you. If you don't feel safe, you shouldn't go." Isabel exhaled, leaning on Kaiser for moral support. She yearned to see her students, to show them she was unafraid, and the school's gesture felt sincere, a collective stand against intimidation. "I'll do it," she said at last. Kaiser and I will be careful. Maybe Detective Riley can coordinate. Her aunt's gaze wavered with concern, but she understood. I'll call them back and confirm. We'll figure out the details. By evening, everything was arranged. The ceremony would be brief, just a small gathering in a main hallway where teachers, parents, and a few local officials would voice gratitude. Detective Riley promised an enhanced police presence to deter any lurking threat. Isabel's aunt spent the remainder of the night fretting over what could go wrong, but Isabel found an undercurrent of determination taking root in her chest. With Kaiser by her side, she wanted to reclaim the sense of purpose that volunteering had given her. She didn't want her life forever shaped by fear. When dawn broke, storm clouds gathered at the horizon, giving the sky a muted gray cast. Isabel dressed carefully, selecting a plain blouse and comfortable trousers that allowed her free movement. She buckled Kaiser's harness snug around his shoulders, feeling his solid frame under her palms. He licked her hand, a gesture of wordless reassurance. Her aunt insisted on driving them both again. The ride to Oakwood Public was quiet. The drizzle started halfway there, painting the windshield with tiny droplets. Isabel stared ahead through the glass, even though she couldn't see. She simply let the rhythmic sway of the wipers calm her, Kaiser's chin resting on her knee. Detective Riley had texted to confirm he was already on site, waiting. They arrived at the parking lot to find it bustling. 2 patrol cars sat near the curb and uniformed officers stood by the main entrance. A few parents hustled under umbrellas. One of the teachers who recognized Isabel hurried forward with a warm smile. "Glad you're here," she said. "We're just about ready. The kids have been buzzing all morning, excited to see Kaiser." Isabel's aunt squeezed her arm. "I'll stay close, but I'll let you shine on your own. Keep me in sight, okay?" She nodded. "Thank you for supporting me." Then, harness in hand, she and Kaiser followed the teacher inside. The hallway smelled faintly of fresh paint, and the echo of conversation bounced off the polished floors. She took measured steps, letting Kaiser guide her around clusters of parents. The presence of so many people felt comforting but also nerve-wracking. She tried to quell the prickle of dread that always threatened to surface. Soon they reached a designated alcove near the library. A podium had been set up, flanked by a few chairs. Isabel sensed the hush that fell as she approached. Detective Riley stood beside the principal, his usual stern face softened by a faint smile. A handful of students, likely from her tutoring group, giggled and waved, though she couldn't see them. She recognized Dina's voice among them, calling out, "Miss Isabel, Kaiser!" Their excitement momentarily lifted her spirits. The principal spoke first, thanking everyone for attending. She praised Isabel's dedication, describing how her volunteer work had made a real difference. Then, in a gentle shift of tone, she acknowledged recent events, emphasizing the importance of unity and resilience. Applause broke out. Isabel could feel the vibrations in the air, and she forced herself to breathe steadily. Detective Riley stepped up to the podium. "We are here to show that Oakwood stands together," he declared. "Criminals who prey on vulnerability will not succeed in silencing or intimidating this community. We have men and women in uniform working around the clock to keep everyone safe, and we have everyday heroes, like Isabel, who remind us that perseverance can overcome fear." More applause rippled, and then the principal invited Isabel to speak. Her aunt guided her gently to the microphone while Kaiser matched each step. She cleared her throat, conscious of the hush. "Thank you," she began softly, voice quivering with emotion. "I never expected recognition for something as simple as reading with children, but volunteering here has been a joy, even if circumstances forced me to pause. I wanted to say that I'm not brave on my own. I'm grateful for the officers who protect us, for the teachers who open doors, for everyone who stands against intimidation. Most of all," her hand found Kaiser's harness, I'm grateful to the dog who saved me and continues to guide me. I hope to come back soon, without fear." Her words earned a gentle wave of cheers. Some parents called out encouragement, and the children murmured in excitement at Kaiser's calm, noble presence. The moment felt like a collective exhale, as though the school had proven something intangible, that they would not cower. Just as Isabel finished speaking, a thunderclap rumbled overhead. The lights flickered momentarily, drawing gasps from the crowd. Rain began tapping louder on the rooftop, adding a drumbeat to the moment. People glanced upward. The principal joked, "Nature's applause," eliciting relieved laughter. Yet Kaiser's body went tense, ears twisting as though picking up a different signal. His nose lifted slightly, and a low noise vibrated in his throat. Isabel felt the tremor, gripping the harness in alarm. "What is it?" she whispered, turning her face toward Detective Riley. He too noticed the sudden shift in the dog's posture. Riley gestured to one of the uniformed officers, who immediately scanned the corridor. The principal paused, uncertain. The children sensed the tension and quieted. Kaiser let out a sharp bark. That was all it took to ignite adrenaline in the hallway. The policeman stepped forward, sliding a hand to his holster. Parents instinctively pulled their children closer. "Stay calm," Detective Riley instructed firmly. "We'll handle this." He beckoned to a second officer who edged down the hall toward the side entrance. Before the officer reached the door, a loud crash echoed from a stairwell around the corner. Shouts of alarm rippled through the crowd. Isabel's heart seized. The sudden bolt of fear made her grip Kaiser's harness so hard, her knuckles ached. The dog barked again, straining forward. Detective Riley rushed to intercept, one hand raised to direct bystanders back. Two more uniformed officers charged past, heading for the source of the noise. Shouts reverberated, "Stop! Police! And don't move!" The tension in the hallway ballooned as frightened children clutched at teachers, uncertain what was happening. A teacher stepped in front of Dina and a few other students, urging them away from the potential danger. Isabel's aunt reached for her, but she remained near the podium, too stunned to move. She felt someone bump her shoulder, perhaps a rushing staff member. Kaiser snarled, hackles raised. Then the corridor filled with chaotic echoes, footsteps pounding and a scuffle of bodies. A man's voice cursed violently. The name Price cut through the commotion, confirming the worst. Detective Riley's voice yelled something, drowned in the confusion. Another crash, like a cart overturning, sent metallic clangs reverberating across the floor. Isabel's breath caught in her throat. She couldn't see where the man was, but the confusion suggested he might have forced his way into a less guarded entrance, creeping in under the cover of the thunderstorm. Had he planned this disruption? Was he armed? Panic roiled in the tight press of worried parents. Kaiser barked twice, pivoting as though uncertain which direction the threat might come from. He wanted to protect her, but also seemed drawn by the impulse to confront the intruder. Detective Riley's shout cut through the turmoil. "Everyone, stay back!" Then a screeching shuffle of feet, someone slipping or struggling. A crack resounded, as if something struck the wall. Isabel's stomach lurched. The magnitude of the danger hammered home in that instant. Price was here, desperate enough to invade a school crawling with police. This could only end in a final showdown. Terror coursed through the hallway. Echoes of the struggle ricocheted off the tiled walls, parents and children pressing against lockers or slipping into nearby classrooms as officers raced to subdue Willis Price. Isabel, heart thudding, heard Kaiser's frantic barks and Detective Riley's urgent commands. She stood immobilized near the makeshift podium, her aunt gripping her arm. But within seconds, the chaos closed in around them. Through the dim echoes, it seemed Price was fighting his way closer, each crash bringing him nearer. Her aunt tried to steer her away from the swirling danger, but Kaiser resisted. The shepherd let out a resonant growl, scanning for the intruder's shape. Then came a sharp shout, Detective Riley yelling, "Drop it, don't you dare!" A split second later, a metallic sound, as though something clattered across the floor. Isabel gulped, imagining Price might have brandished a weapon. A fresh wave of scuffling erupted beyond the corner. Children shrieked and teachers called for them to stay low. The overhead lights flickered yet again, maybe from the storm intensifying outside. Isabel's aunt muttered, "We have to move," tugging at her elbow. But before they could retreat, a figure stumbled into view, grappling with an officer. Price, panting, eyes wild, flung the officer aside. The man slammed into the corridor's metal lockers, his radio skidding away. Isabel couldn't see Price's expression, but she sensed his presence. The tension in the air prickled against her skin. Kaiser barked, a furious protective roar. Her aunt gasped, stepping between Isabel and the intruder, but Price lunged, seizing her aunt's arm. "Out of my way!" he snarled, and with a violent shove he sent her crashing into a nearby doorframe. A cry escaped her as she collapsed onto the floor. "No!" Isabel shouted, fear surging. She reached blindly forward, her cane clattering from her grip. Kaiser launched himself with a thunderous bark, body coiled like a spring. Price tried to dodge, but the shepherd was too swift, snapping his jaws in warning. The intruder reeled backward, cursing in pain as Kaiser's movement forced him off balance. Detective Riley, regaining his footing from somewhere behind, yelled, "Freeze!" But Price, cornered, flailed at Kaiser in desperation. The dog withdrew momentarily, prowling in a half-circle to guard Isabel. Heart pounding, she crouched to check on her aunt, who groaned softly. "I'm okay," her aunt breathed, though her voice trembled. "Stay there," Isabel pleaded, voice shaking. Kaiser was all that stood between them and Price. Nearby, an officer was scrambling to reclaim his radio, shouting for backup. The corridor reeked of sweat and fear. Price, frantic, scanned for an escape route. His eyes lit on Isabel, alone, vulnerable if not for the dog, and in a reckless bid for leverage, he lunged toward her, hoping she might be used as a shield. Kaiser erupted forward with astonishing speed. Price swung an arm to ward him off, but the shepherd's training prevailed. A fierce snarl ripped from his throat as he snapped just shy of Price's sleeve. That was enough to break the intruder's momentum, forcing him to sidestep. Detective Riley then surged in, tackling Price around the midsection, slamming him into the lockers with a metallic crash. Panting, Price tried to elbow the detective's face, but Riley anticipated the move and wrestled the man's arm behind his back. Within seconds, two more officers converged. They pinned Price to the ground, cuffing his wrists. The hallway reverberated with the final clang of metal on metal, the suspect cursing in defeat. Isabel's breath came in ragged gulps. She could only guess what was happening visually, but the sounds told her the fight was over. Kaiser, muzzle low, maintained a rigid stance until Riley barked, "At ease, boy." Slowly, the shepherd relaxed, though a low growl still rumbled in his chest. The hush that fell was broken only by frightened whispers. A teacher hurried forward to help Isabel's aunt, who was shaken but able to stand with assistance. Detective Riley knelt on one knee beside Price, double-checking the cuffs and retrieving what looked like a small blade from the floor. "You're done," he muttered grimly. "Weapons on school property. There's no wiggling out of that." Price spat, eyes blazing with hatred. All for a blind girl and her stupid mutt. She got lucky. Riley's jaw tightened. Luck had nothing to do with it. Kaiser protected her, and you made a mistake showing up here. He nodded at the other officers. "Take him out to the cruiser. Book him for assault, trespassing, and possession of a weapon on school grounds. We'll add the other charges soon enough." As Price was hauled away, the adrenaline began to drain from the hallway. Parents peeked around doors, guiding children back into supervised areas. Several teachers rushed to check on each other. The principal, her face pale, approached Isabel, who knelt to reclaim her fallen cane. Kaiser padded close, pressing his flank into Isabel's side as if needing to confirm she was unharmed. Her aunt limped to Isabel's side, hugging her fiercely. "Thank God," she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. "He nearly—" She broke off, voice quaking. Isabel hugged her back, heart still hammering. She reached to feel for the dog's fur, and Kaiser leaned his head into her palm, an unspoken reassurance. "I'm sorry you got hurt," Isabel told her aunt softly. "Are you all right?" "I'll be fine," her aunt managed, voice shaky. "Just a bruise on my arm, I think." Detective Riley stepped over, stooping to look them both in the face. "He's in custody," he said quietly, placing a hand on Isabel's shoulder. "It's over. Price won't be bothering you ever again." Those words registered like distant thunder. Isabel breathed out a tremulous exhale, letting relief seep through the terror. The corridor filled with subdued applause, some staff members and parents who'd re-emerged, giving thanks that no child had been harmed. One teacher ventured a tearful "that dog saved them," pointing at Kaiser with gratitude shining in her eyes. A wave of exhaustion washed over Isabel. She could barely stand. Her aunt noticed and guided her gently against the wall. Kaiser stayed pressed to her leg, quietly watchful. It was the principal who offered a plastic chair, urging Isabel to sit. A swirl of emotions flitted through her. Shock, relief, a quiver of disbelief that Price had finally been caught. She dreaded this confrontation, never expecting it to happen so suddenly in a place once again connected to her volunteer work. Officers escorted Price outside to the waiting cruiser, while paramedics arrived to check her aunt's injuries. Isabel felt a warm tear slip down her cheek. Groping for Kaiser's collar, she whispered, "Thank you," remembering how in the final moment of danger, he'd leapt between her and Price. She realized, not for the first time, that their bond was no ordinary arrangement. He had placed himself in harm's way without hesitation. Detective Riley took a moment to speak with the principal, then returned to Isabel. "Would you like us to get you to the hospital for a checkup?" he asked gently. "You took quite a scare." Isabel shook her head. "No, I'm fine. My aunt might need it more than me. I just need a moment to breathe." She sensed teachers clustering nearby. Familiar children's voices rose in hushed queries, Dina among them squeaking, "Is Miss Isabel okay?" The principal assured them all was under control, guiding them back to the library so paramedics and police could do their work unimpeded. In that hush, Detective Riley pulled up another chair beside her. He gave Kaiser a light pat on the shoulder. "The department's going to give him a commendation. He's prevented a tragedy more than once now. First out on the street and now here in the school." Isabel managed a small smile through the tears that threatened to spill. "He deserves it. I can't believe how fast it all happened. If he hadn't—" She stopped, unable to finish the thought. Riley nodded, sympathy in his gaze. "But he did. That's all that matters. Price won't threaten you again. I promise he'll face serious charges. You'll likely need to testify, but there's enough evidence to keep him locked up." A wave of shaky relief coursed through her. She reached out, and Kaiser nudged her hand with his nose as though to say, "I'm still here." She stroked his ears, letting the surge of gratefulness fill her lungs, steadying the wild beat of her heart. Her aunt, newly bandaged, inched over to them, relief plain on her face. "It's done," her aunt said, voice wavering. "You're safe now." Isabel sank her cheek against Kaiser's broad head. Exhaustion, shock, and a raw sense of triumph mingled in her chest. "Yes," she breathed, "we're safe." In the aftermath, the paramedics finished checking for minor injuries and teachers ushered worried students outside doors to waiting buses. Police tape went up around the stairwell where the confrontation had begun, though the immediate threat was gone. Amid the swirl of official procedure, one of the teachers approached with tears shining in her eyes. silently handing Isabel a small bouquet of daisies she'd grabbed from the staff lounge. "We're so glad you're all right," the woman whispered, voice thick with relief. "Everyone owes you and that dog a huge debt." Isabel cradled the flowers, feeling the soft petals beneath her fingertips. "I just did what I could," she murmured. "Kaiser did the rest." Detective Riley tapped Isabel's aunt on the shoulder. "Let's get you two home. Paperwork can wait until tomorrow. You'll need rest. This day's been eventful enough." Kaiser followed them out, proud yet calm, as though everything had gone exactly as intended. The thickening storm clouds unleashed a fresh bout of rain outside. Thunder growled over Oakwood, but the tension in the air felt cleansed. Price was in custody, his violent campaign at an end. The police K-9 had done his duty once again, proving that no menace could stand against courage and loyalty bound together. In the drizzle, as Detective Riley guided them to a waiting car, Isabel allowed herself a fragile smile. The road ahead would still carry challenges. She would need time to heal the mental wounds. But there, leaning on Kaiser's warmth, she felt something like hope rising, a promise that the life she treasured could finally resume, free from the shadow of fear.